Alright everybody, sorry it's been such a long time. I'm snowed in right now and have some time off work because of that, so I thought, I can finally get a little bit of free time and do some tutorials for you guys. So, the tutorial today, I'm doing this thing at work, animation of the Gulf Stream and how climate change can impact the speed of the Gulf Stream. And so as you can see here, to represent the Gulf Stream coming up the coast, this is not entirely scientifically accurate Gulf Stream, it's just a representation. So I've got this arrow that is moving in this serpentine fashion along this path. And so I'm going to show you how to do this, one kind of trick, and then you can apply that to anything kind of like moving along a path in a serpentine manner. So let's go ahead and recreate the arrow here. Alright, so let me set my workspace. And I'll turn on the screencast keys, so you can see what's going on. Center the target, and we'll create a cube. And we'll stretch this little guy out. Go into edit mode. Give it some segments. Create some more segments here. Number of loop cuts. Set to like 6. Should be enough. Alright. Oops. Somehow that got moved around there a little bit. Okay, let's go ahead and give this a subdivision surface modifier so that it's nice and smooth. And we'll go into shading smoothing, make it smooth looking. Alright. Create another cut here. Let's move that one down. And create one up here. That one up. Alright, so we got that. And we'll create one lengthwise. Alright, we'll go into face mode here. Let's we need this to kind of taper off at the one end, so I'll turn on the proportional editing. If you haven't used this before, it's a nice feature. Turn that on, and then whatever modifier you want, like in this case we're going to scale it. So if you hit S, you see this little white circle. If you move your mouse wheel up and down, you can increase the influence, and so set it to influence about 3/4 of this. And now when you hit S, you can see that it creates a tapering effect. Alright, same thing with moving. Anything you do, if you move, you rotate and stuff, everything happens in kind of like a nice spread out fashion, proportional editing. Alright, so I'm done with, well, let's move it out a little bit more. Scale it down a little bit more. Alright, now I'm done with the proportional editing. I'll disable that. Oops. And I need to squash this out a bit more. And make it so that the center of the object is at the tail there. Let's move this whole guy back. Scale him down just so I have room to work with. And now let's create the head of the arrow. Oops. I'm not doing an incredible modeling job. I saw some normals were out of whack and stuff. We can deal with that later. Alrighty, and then we'll just hit E to extrude it. Create a little ring there to make sure that we have a nicely defined edge for the arrow. E to extrude that again, and then we'll just start scaling this baby out. Okay. Alright, so now we have kind of like the head for the arrow. And we'll go into vertex mode. Oops, 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 whoa, whoa. And collapse them at the center. And now we have kind of like a head for the arrow. Somehow I got something. I accidentally created some vertices there. Oops. Oh, well, let's not worry about that right now. Okay, where are we at? Alright, there we go. We got an arrow kind of shape thing. Move those vertices back so that it has more of an arrow shape to it. Let me try to create that again and get that loop cut. For some reason, the loop... Oh. I'm having a hard time kind of finding the sweet spot there. Well, actually, you don't really need it. You can see that it's ahead of an arrow. Alright, so it's not the greatest modeling job in the world, obviously. Let's go ahead and give it a material and give it a red color, just like the one in the demonstration. Alright. I do want to scale this head of this arrow down. Oops. Make it more in line with what we had in the other demonstration. Okay, so now we have our arrow object, so let's create the armature to go with it. Alright, so we will create an armature, single bone, and move that single bone down to the very end of the armature, because this thing is going to be moving. It's going to be kind of pushed along the path from its butt end, so we want to put the beginning of the armature at the very end of the arrow. In this case, alright? So obviously, case-by-case situation, your mileage may vary. So let's go and tab into our edit mode here, and we can start editing the armature. And I'll just hit Shift-D to create another bone in the armature, R90 to rotate it on its side. Line that up with the base there, and grab the tip of that and move it all the way to the end, so we have coverage on the entire thing. And then, oops, let me bring up my tool panel again. We're going to need that W to subdivide. And now here under subdivide multi, you can see we can create enough cuts so that we're going to have a nice deformation when we get done with this. All right, so 5 cuts is good. So I hit Tab to go back into edit mode. All right, select this last bone here and shift select the one that's standing up, and Control P to parent it. Keep offset. This just makes sure that when we move this guy, if you see tab into pose mode, for example, we move this guy, these guys are going to move along with him. Alright, so actually we've got to go into object mode here. So we'll select our arrow, and actually, oops, that looks like it's a bit too far out. Alright, so, select our arrow, shift select our armature, Control P, set parent to armature deform, automatic weights. Alright, so now if we select the armature and go into our little wrench here, you'll see that we have the armature modifier applied. And if we select this and go into pose mode and start moving it around, you'll see that in fact the armature has applied that. And you know what I'm going to do? I am going to move the subsurface modifier down below the armature. So, oops, no, I don't want to do that. It seemed that I needed to do that before. Let me keep that up there. There we go. Alright. So, as you can see here, we have subsurface modifier and then the armature modifier. Okay, and let's create a path for this guy to move along. Shift A, curve, path. Alright. Move this path over here somewhere, and then tab to edit the path. Let's just start grabbing out these vertices on the path. We can start moving them into place. Create a nice curved path here. Now, editing the path is very similar to editing the rest of the stuff in Blender. For example, if you want to extend the path, select the last vertex and hit E to extrude. Alright. If you want, for example, to subdivide, select 2 vertices and hit W to subdivide. So now you can start getting like a curved path here. Alright. So now we'll be able to start moving in a serpentine fashion along this path. Alright, now what we could do is, well, what we could do if we weren't looking for good results is to just go into the bone constraint panel and say follow path for each one of these bones. But the problem is I found it doesn't work very well because it's the base of the bone that follows the constraint and not the tip. And so when you get along the corners here, curves, the thing tends to crumble up. So we're going to create some objects for this thing to follow along, some kind of control objects for each bone to follow along. So I'll create a cube here. All right. And I'll tab into edit mode. And then I'll just create, I'm just going to take the edges here, the vertices, and merge them to create kind of like this kind of shape here, so that we'll be able to see kind of where we're going here. We'll be able to tell for sure where, to make sure that we're going along the path correctly. That's why I gave it that shape. So let me move this guy out of here for the time being. All right. So now this guy, let's go into our wireframe so we can accurately put it on the end here. All right. So I'm going to try to put the base of this object exactly precisely at the start of this path. All right. So now let's go ahead and create a path constraint for this object. All right. So we'll go into our little widget here under modifier. Oops, I'm sorry. It's under the little link here for constraint, and say follow path. And since there's only one path, that's the only thing we can choose. And as you can see, it'll kind of zip away possibly. You see this little blue line connecting it to the path. Make sure that that blue line to start out with is as imperceivable as possible. And click follow curve. In this case, I need to rotate and move it so that it's in edit mode here, so it's following the curve correctly. Alright, so now we have one control object, and then if we have it all set up to follow the curve, and so now if I start animating this, or start moving this offset modifier, this offset value here, it'll start moving along the curve. And what you do is you go ahead and you animate this in order to, so we will set this here, and then I'll just hit I when I'm floating over top of this to set a keyframe. Then, for example, if you get to the end of your animation, where you want the animation to end on whatever frame, then just change that value, and that's how you animate along the path. All right. So let's turn on automatic keyframing and set that to go to the end of our path. All right, and so now we have one object animating. We'll set the end here. Okay, so now there's our time scale. Alrighty, we have one object animating along a path. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to create a series of we're going to create a series of these objects, one for each bone that we want to control. And so I need to duplicate this several times. So Shift D, move it over just a little bit, just so I can see it. And then I'm going to hit U for object and data, which means if I don't do that, each control object will have the exact same animation data, and that means that I will not be able to differentiate them. So now what I'm going to start doing, every time I have a control object here, I'm going to start one of these guys off as okay. Move that guy over. And so do this for each one. Just create a control. Oops, I forgot. I got to U object and data. So let's start moving the offset here for this guy. Oops. Okay, each time. So how many do we have here? We have 3, 4. Make sure that when you create these guys at the beginning, you want to put them back at the exact center of that, at the exact center of the start of that path, if possible. Because if you don't do this, you can see the little blue. If you don't do this and you go to the end of your animation here, they will have. They will not mesh up correctly. They'll be kind of like swinging off to the side of the path instead of following it correctly. So that's all you have to do. You have to make sure that each time you create one of these guys, that they are set up correctly, so that there's the blue line there is not like, they're not like way off to the side here. You can see that little blue line there. So you want to make sure that that's right in the center of your control object. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So that should be good enough to start moving our object here. So, oops, sorry about that. So let's start moving these guys into place here. So each bone is going to kind of align with one of these control objects. So we want to move them along. We want to move their offset to start them off at a spot that looks correct. All right, so the first one, oops, I'm going to move this temporarily to another layer. All right, so this guy, I'm going to go into object mode. And I'm going to shift click and control P parent it to the object. Alright, that guy's parented to the object. Alrighty, and we'll go back into pose mode so I can start adding some constraints. Move this guy back. And you want each bone, each control object to be at the spot where the tip of the bone is. Alright, so each bone, we're going to go to the bone constraint panel and add a track to constraint. And let's see, this object is called cube 5. So track to cube 5. Alright? So you can see already things are starting to make a bit more sense here. So you can see how it'll start to affect this. Alright? Let's move this one back a little bit farther. Okay, so this guy here is going to track to cube 4. That guy there is going to track to cube number 3. And that guy, of course, will track to cube number 2. And that guy there, oops, track to cube number 1. It looks like I ran out of cubes here. I think I need one more control object. So I will shift click on that guy, make the new object in data, and I'll call this cube 0, 0, 0. And let's see, I will move this guy over here. Right, and so that one is going to track to cube 0. All right, and so see, it's starting to kind of go there. Actually, one doesn't actually need that. It's going along. Okay, so what we need to do is, when we get to the end of our animation here, which was frame 80, see that everything's all screwed up because we set all these guys to have the exact same end spot. So what we got to do is select, starting with the last cube here, start moving the offset back. Back him up. And do that with each one of these until you get a nice pose for everybody. So that everything is, like I said, so that the tip of each bone is at, so that these control objects are over top of the tip of each bone. And since you're already set in your animate mode here, you should be good to go. Move that guy back. Alrighty. And then you might say, oh, you know what? These control objects can be anything you want. Obviously, you won't want them to render, so I just turn these off in the outliner. Just go ahead and unclick this camera, and then they won't show up in the rendering. Let's go back to the beginning here. For some reason, it flipped over. Okay, now that looks more like what we wanted. Okay. Okay. Just gotta put that in place there. It wasn't in place correctly at first. Alright, so now let's animate it. And there we go. It's moving along the path exactly the way we wanted. So you have to kind of manually move it into place a little bit. Like I was saying there, you have to you can even hide these control objects from the view completely if you don't want to see them. You can still select them if you have the little arrow button there, if you just want to preview what's going on. But as you can see here, the object is flowing smoothly along this path. And just by changing the timing and stuff of the control objects, you can change the feel of how this goes along this path here. And of course, if you change the object itself, like the geometry of it, change the bones and stuff, add new control objects and animate them along the path using that same exact method. So let's go and turn these guys back on, and then we'll do a little review here. So we created the object from a cube, created some cuts, and then we stretched it out. We created an armature to go inside of it. We moved everything off onto the at the beginning of the path here. We create a path object. Then we created these control objects, and we constrained them using the path constraint, and we set their offset so that each constraint object was at the tip of the bone it's going to control. Then we simply added a track 2 constraint to each bone and pointed it basically at each control object. The last object, the last bone in our armature here, we parented to the last control object so that the whole thing gets pushed along with the cubes. And then basically control cubes, it was just a matter of, at the beginning and end of the animation, setting their offsets to the correct points. So at the beginning of the animation, the bones are pointing correctly at the control objects, and then again at the end of the animation we have to individually set the the offset value for each of the control objects so that everything, all the bones point and line up correctly to those bone control objects. So I hope that helps out. I'm hoping to do some more stuff here in the future. I'm taking a course at Animation Mentor, and I hope to tell you about how my time there is, so that if you want to, become a better animator and are thinking about going to an animation school, maybe my, the stuff that happens to me at the animation school may be of interest to you. So I hope this tip helps you out, and I'll